Am I wrong for writing a letter to the judge in my brother's case asking her not to give him the minimum mandatory sentence? My brother recently entered a blind plea in federal court on 2 rather heinous sex-related offenses, admitting his guilt rather than going to trial, putting his sentencing in the hands of the federal judge, based on the sentencing recommendation submitted to the court by a probation officer after reviewing the evidence in the case. Interview with my brother and reads any letters of support or victim statements. My brother is a repeat offender at the federal level, previously arrested in 2004 and served 7 years. He was released in 2011 and supported 100% financially by my mom and stepfather. My mother blamed herself for staying in an abusive marriage to our biological father. In 2015, after 4 years of living on his own, he violated his probation on the state level 3 times from 2015 to 2018. He was most recently released in 2019 and he was able to find a full-time job, get an apartment and seem like he had sort of gotten his life together. Last July, he was arrested by the feds again for 2 near-identical sex-related crimes. Really bad stuff. Having to tell my mom he was in jail again was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. She was devastated. Seeing that I know my brother better than anyone else, the prosecuting attorney agreed with my decision to write a letter to the judge and probation officer, giving insight into my brother and our very messed up family background that was filled with all kinds of abuse and info about who my father was, both the good and the bad. My brother is a pathological liar, a narcissist, and can somehow charm people into thinking like he wants, except women. He is an incel at the worst level. I wrote the judge to beg her not to just give the minimum mandatory sentence of 15 years. He is facing life. I gave a very clear explanation as to our family history, my brother's previous questionable actions that were red flags we all missed, and I also included a notarized statement from 2014 that my brother wrote and gave to me detailing his abuse as a child, when I was going through court actions of my own against our father. In that letter he admitted to things he was never charged with. Well, now that the sentencing report was finalized, my brother and his attorney were given copies of my letter and he went nuclear on me in an email to my stepfather, saying how my letter to the judge is the nail in his coffin and he blames me for what he realizes will be a very long sentence. My stepfather thought I was being a bit vindictive that I included the 2014 statement my brother wrote, because he feels it was unnecessary. While I don't hate my brother, I hate who he became, and if he is ever released, he will re-offend, and that scares the hell out of me. Am I the a-hole for writing to the judge? Edit to add, these recent charges do not involve him abusing minors, but rather possession and distribution of CP, which is just as if not even more horrible, because it just continues to add to the cycle of abuse worldwide. Additional edit, for those of you wondering, the statement he wrote, which I had, was something he wrote, notarized, and gave to police when I filed a criminal complaint against my father in a state we lived in when I was a child that had no statute of limitations. I honestly, even after his probation violations, which were state charges, never thought about that letter/statement, as I had severed contact with him at that point. I didn't remember, I still had a scanned copy of it in an old email until the prosecuting attorney and I were speaking about his abuse and our family life growing up. So, it's not like I intentionally withheld this info. It was given to police a decade ago, and I had forgotten about it until a few months ago. Update: after about 4 sentencing delays, he finally went before the judge and was sentenced to the max allowed in his case, 27 years in federal prison. While I hate that this is the way his life turned out, and that he will spend pretty much the rest of his life in federal prison, but these are the choices he made. These were heinous crimes against children who will have to deal with this the rest of their lives. It is only right that he has to suffer the consequences of his actions. Do I regret sending that letter to the judge? No, not for a moment. As a victim of childhood abuse by our father for almost 10 years, the fact is that he perpetuated the abuse of other children, though his actions and my brother knew how my own abuse severely impacted my life. While I know he has severe psychological issues and a porn addiction, due to abuse and indoctrination by our father, it doesn't excuse him. In my eyes, it makes it worse. So to some, it may seem like me writing the judge was an a-hole move, but my conscience is clear.